everyone. Welcome to Ask Amy. Typically, I would run a rerun today since it is technically a holiday here in the US, but I have so many amazing questions in my queue, and I really want to get to them. And I got a few more, and I hate telling people it'll be a few weeks, so I want to just power through and speak to all the questions I possibly can. So this one is from Jag, and yes, he sent it a few weeks ago, but let's see what he has to say. Sorry, it looks strange as I'm reading on my screen here. Okay, so Jag says, thank you for all the work you do. I've been listening to Changeable on my daily bike commute to work every day. I'm on episode 19 now. It's so profound. Awesome. I have a question regarding OCD. I have harm OCD, and the latest manifestation of it is regarding my job. I work in a laboratory and have been doing so for 10 years. I have this sticky thought that because I have OCD, I could make a mistake and send out the wrong result on a patient. My OCD tells me I should quit my job because I could be a danger to patients because I could make a mistake. If I'm at work in the lab and I'm working my way through patient samples, I work logically and methodically, and it's very unlikely that something has been mixed up. But the thought pops into my head, what if you mix these samples up? And I don't know how to combat that thought. Is there anything I can do or tell myself when my mind starts doing these what ifs? Okay, so I love what you see about this already, Jag. So you say, like, when my OCD tells me that, I just love that phrase. And I know I responded to you, I think, when you first sent this and said that. Like, I just love that phrase because that's showing you so much. Like, your OCD, whatever that is, but your mind's tendencies basically are telling you this and they're telling you that, and they're talking about mistakes, and they're telling you should quit your job. You recognize that there's a whole mind conversation there that is not a Jag conversation, right? It's not, yes, it's coming through your own mind and in a voice that might sound like yours, but it's not coming from you. That's not you. You say it really clearly. My OCD tells me this. And you know that OCD is not accurate, not reliable source of information. It's repetitive, it's obsessive, it's nothing that you want to actually base decisions on. So I just say that up front to kind of remind you and everyone listening, yeah, it's awesome to see that separation and to know, okay, my OCD mind talks this way and feels this way as well. So as you said, other places you get the physical symptoms of anxiety when your mind starts going down all the what if trails, of course, right? So that's all this thing that happens. Again, this thing that happens, not you, not reality, not the truth, not anything anyone would ever want to actually base decisions from, but this thing that your mind happens to do right now. So it leads into something so big because you're asking, well, what can I do? What can I tell myself when my mind starts doing all this what if, and you should just quit, and what if you mixed them up and all of that? And there are a few things I want you to see in this. One is that as your mind is doing all this, the more you're kind of knowing, okay, this is all of this worry is my OCD mind. You also say in your question, I work very logically and methodically, right? So you know that you said it right in there. The chances of mixing up sample, incredibly low. No higher for you, I'm sure, than anyone else who works logically and methodically, right? So see how even when your mind's over here having this conversation, and I get it, it's a circular, annoying, heavy, sometimes very scary, very real feeling conversation. But even while that conversation is happening, you know what to do. You're not doing your job, even though you're doing it logically and methodically. You're not doing your job from the same busy head that's over here obsessing about this other story. What if this and what if that? That's kind of a different thing. Like you know your job. You're doing your job. You are the one who asks this question, who says things like, the chances of me mixing up a sample are incredibly low, and my OCD says, like, see if you can kind of feel this difference. Now, I'm not saying in each and every moment try to figure out the difference, but just see if you can feel the fact the fact, the truth that you're being lived. You're being lived by something that's so much bigger and deeper than this repetitive mind that spins in circles. And that being lived is happening. It takes you to work every day. It's led you to do a really great job so far. It's led you to ask this question. It leads you to know, okay, something's not right in the way my mind talks. Like, it is there in enormous ways that are hard for us to see sometimes when our mind is really obsessed on something, when our mind is so repetitive and it's hard to step away from that. But really, really look in that direction and rest assured that something bigger is living you. It's living all of us, right? We all the time. I love the example because it's so clear of like standing on a stage. Let's say you're going to give a talk, or just even standing up, if this is a thing for people, standing up to introduce yourself in a crowded room, or to speak up at a meeting or something. Your body starts doing all kinds of stuff. Your mind might be saying, my mind says, every time I step on a stage, run. Like, it's not too late, you can leave. And yet my feet walk me to the microphone, and I do what I'm there to do. And within a couple minutes of opening my mouth, all the thoughts and feelings have kind of gone away. Now, they don't always go away that quickly, but I want you to see in that, Jag, that that same thing is happening for you all the time. You're being lived and you're doing fine, and your mind is just spinning in circles. So your question was really about, there's a few pieces to it, but what can I tell myself? What can I do in those moments? And it's not so much like, I don't know what, if there's something that helps you to ground you in this bigger truth, to remind you that this is just a OCD mind and that you aren't that and that you're okay, be open to hearing that from yourself. Like we, each of us has to stumble upon specifics like that work. I couldn't tell you a mantra or a phrase, because there is no magic thing like that. But maybe there is something that helps you remember what's what and what's going on that'll be helpful for you. But really what I want you to see is so much bigger than this little thought reminder, this little thing you might say or do in a moment, is that this difference between who you really are, how life works, how it's always moving through you and living you, and then how your mind is over here talking in circles, as that difference grows, and as you hang out, which side are we hanging out on? Hanging out on this one more and more, like, oh, I'm okay. I just see, yep, there goes my mind again, thinking about what if. I'm feeling all the what if feelings. That's just what happens when a mind makes up stuff, which is what your mind is doing. It's making up scary stories. You are grounded more and more over here. It's like the obsessive thoughts, the repetitive stuff, the feelings that come along with them, the suggestions to quit your job, all of that, rather than it being this huge bubble that you might feel like you live within right now, it gets further and further away, and further and further and further and further. And your mind might still say all that stuff for a little bit, but I can't even tell you enough what a difference it makes. It's everything for that to start to move further and further from you. Now, how do we do that? How do we get that further away? This might sound like a not satisfactory answer, but we just explore it. Like, the more we really, with an open mind and a curiosity, look at all of this and say, wow, what is true? Let's not just let's watch a 10-minute video and get fixed. Like, what is always there? What is living me? What is true of all people? How is it that when my mind settles down or I get distracted from it or whatever, that's right, I'm fine and I'm making great decisions and I'm living my life and there's nothing wrong. And then when my mind gets kind of antsy and repetitive and obsessive, and especially when I'm really tuned into it, listening to it, I feel like completely different. I feel like everything's a mess and I'm a wreck and I can't make a decision and I don't know what to do. Like, what's going on with that? And what if it's true that when my mind gets repetitive and obsessive and all of that, and I'm feeling the effects of it, what if that really is just a machine on repeat? What if it is nothing fancier than this little hunk of plastic? Our brain's a little fancier than this, but it's a machine. It's a machine just doing what it does. And the fact that it does and says the same things that aren't real over and over. So it makes up the same imaginary scenarios and scares you with them over and over and over again. Doesn't point to truth. If it was truth, this stuff would happen. It's just pointing to the fact that there's a mechanism, there's a mechanical thing happening, and it's just that your mind just repeats. Now, here's the thing. Here's how this ends for people is we explore it, you get more and more grounded in who you really are, like what does not change and what's loving you. You get more and more curious and interested in how this repetitive machine thing works, and you start to see it as more of a machine than a truth. And like I was saying, this moves out here, so it's still over here talking every once in a while, but it just doesn't fool you in the same way. And the further away it gets and the more you see it for what it is, the less you care. Like the less you listen, the less you're thinking, how should I combat it? What should I say back? Like all of that starts to just not look like stuff you would wonder about. It's just not that big a deal. And the less you're looking at it, paying attention to it, afraid of it, it has no reason to keep repeating itself. It loves our attention. Our mind loves our attention. Our attention is like neural superglue. It just keeps all those pathways going, right? So when we see it for what it is and we're like, you again, it goes away. I mean, it might find something else to talk about, but by that time, you've seen through it enough that if it picks up a different story, you're going to see through that too. Like it just loses its power. Not saying it falls silent for life, but all of the patterns that you're experiencing, all this OCD stuff, it just looks different enough to where you're not staring at it so much. And when we're not staring at it so much and we're not afraid of it, there's no reason for it to keep hanging out and repeating itself. And in fact, it doesn't. That's what leads it to kind of just drop off. So it's kind of a long answer to your very short question. And I say it's kind of potentially an unsatisfactory answer because again, it's not a thing you can say. I don't have a thing to give you to say right now. I don't have a thing to tell anyone to do this. There's not like 3 steps. There's not a do this, to say that, any of that. But there truly, truly is such a difference in not just this particular thing, but how you see all of life that starts to happen as you deepen in this exploration. And Jag, I know you're enrolled in the Little School of Big Change that starts in a few weeks, and I'm so thrilled about that because you're going to get that there. That's exactly what the Little School of Big Change does. I don't have a mantra for people. We don't pass out, band-aids and like, here's what you do and here's how you cope. But we explore in a deep way who we are, and man, we get familiar with that in a way that most people never have been. And we explore how our mind works. And man, we get familiar with that in a way that leads us to be like, really? This is what's been running my life? Is this repetitive machine? And then these things grow and separate and things just look and feel so different from there. So I hope it's helpful. Thank you so much for sending your question, Jag, and for being patient with my response. And again, to everyone else, I have all your questions. They're all in line, and I will get to them as quickly as I can. And sorry for the drilling in the background. It's a holiday, so there's projects going on at my house. But thanks so much for listening. And really, if you want to explore this difference more and more and get to the core of OCD, anxiety, habitual thought, which is behind all of our habits, all of our addictions, any issue we have, please consider pre-enrolling in the Little School of Big Change because it's just the best, most guided, supportive, deep exploration into this that there is. And it's awesome. So thanks so much. Have a great week, and I'll see you guys next Monday. Bye.